you have a bag of popcorn ready because here we go. We are moving on to the second Punic War. This is round 2 against Rome and Carthage, and this is where it gets really fun. So, like I said, grab that popcorn, grab a drink, and settle on in. This is going to be one wild ride. You ready for Hamilcar to show up and take over? Well, remember when I said, hey, Hamilcar from Punic War #1, remember him? Yeah, he was hanging out in Spain, and I don't think he had a purple dread or mohawk, but it looks really cool. He was hanging out in Carthage, and he decides, you know what? The Romans, I don't like them. They did horrible things to my people, but Carthage, we can rebuild and we can recover and we can still continue to be a great empire. So he packs up, takes the family to Spain, and starts conquering lands for Carthage. Now remember, Carthage is in northern Africa, so he crosses the Mediterranean and ends up in the Iberian Peninsula. And every single time I say Iberian Peninsula, I mean Spain and all the lands around Spain. So he takes off to Iberian Peninsula and starts conquering land for Carthage. Go Hamilcar! He takes the whole family, including his 2 kids. He has an older boy named Hasdrubal and a younger boy named Hannibal. Hannibal. He's going to be the man. Just you wait and see. So Hamilcar takes his whole family off to the Iberian Peninsula, but points out to his kids that, look, you need to understand that we do not like Rome. We do not want to be friends with Rome. We do not like anything about Rome, and you must swear an oath to always hate Rome. Kind of harsh, I know, but 9-year-old Hannibal swore an oath that he would always hate Rome, always fight Rome. And it was the only thing, at least according to legend, was the only reason that Hannibal was brought over to the Iberian Peninsula was that he agreed to take this oath, that he would be an enemy to Rome always. So he heads off to the Iberian Peninsula with his dad. His dad, Hamilcar, finds a wife with one of the local tribes in Spain in order to form an alliance, and then continues his conquering of Spain. During one of the battles, while they're crossing a river, Hamilcar gets hit with an arrow and dies, and therefore it's time for someone else to take over the army. Well, who's it going to be? If you say Hannibal, no, sorry. He's too young. He's only 17 at the time. He is not old enough to run an army. So Hasdrubal, his older brother, Hasdrubal the Fair, takes over. And although he was a decent general, he's not going to be as good as Hannibal. Look at him there, man. He's just ready. Oh, it's coming, man. It's coming. Finally, Hannibal is old enough. He decides, you know what, my brother just isn't doing this right. By the time that Hannibal turns 19, he's like, this is not okay. My brother is just sort of, he's a great guy, but he's too kind. He's too, he's not meant to get out and command an army. And Hannibal has been waiting for this moment his whole life, since he was about 9 years old and told that he has to hate Rome. So he's conquering land in Spain, and they come up to this small city, and I guess it's not super small, but it's a decent city, called Saguntum. Now, Saguntum is in the Iberian Peninsula, in where is now Spain. And it's not Iberian, it's Roman. Romans put the city here in order to be a trade port, so they could trade back and forth and have a nice little city state there. Wasn't part of the Roman Republic. They had their own rules, had their own laws, but they were supplied by Rome. They had good relations with Rome. They were practically Roman, according to Hannibal. So Hannibal was not going to just continue to march his army past this city. Oh, no. No, this was going to be the starting point. This was going to be him proving to the Romans that he was tough. This city was high up on a hill, and it was very secured and very protected with giant walls, had lots of defenses, and, well, Hannibal was going to take it. So Hannibal starts fighting the city with his men. Now, most of his men are actually mercenaries. If you don't know what a mercenary is, they are a group of people who are actually being paid to fight for you. So if you hire a bunch of mercenaries, you hire a bunch of guys and say, hey, I'm going to pay you $20 to go do this, and someone else comes along and says, hey, man, going to stop you there. I'm going to pay you $40 to not do this. They're probably going to listen to people that get paid more from. So Hannibal needed a way to pay all of his army because Carthage really didn't want to pay his army. So Hannibal says, look, we siege the city, we take the city, you can have everything in it. This is how I'm going to pay you. And his army says, sounds good, because most of his army were from the Numidian tribe in North Africa, and they were happy to follow whoever was going to pay them. So it takes 8 months to take this town. And Saguntum, throughout this 8 months, is asking for help from Rome, begging for help from Rome, sending messengers out to ask for help from Rome. And Rome is too busy in other battles in other places that they don't send help to Saguntum. There's even a 2-week period of battling that completely stops because Hannibal gets injured with an arrow, and the battles completely stop for 2 weeks. Rome still doesn't show up. So 8 months in, Hannibal finally takes down the last defense in the city, marches into the city, and takes it down. Most of the people in the city are captured and sold into slavery. They had the option to surrender and leave, and they wouldn't. They fought to the end. So very brave of the people of Saguntum, but they didn't make it out. Hannibal loots the city, takes everything that he wants, hands all the food, hands everything to all of his men. They come away with plenty of riches and clothes and food, and they are ready to continue on towards Rome. Hannibal is all about taking down Rome. He gets information, or he tells Carthage, he says, look, I've taken Saguntum, I'm marching to Rome. And Carthage, well, the main government in Carthage is like, oh, I guess you can do that, Hannibal. Go ahead, sure, okay. They're not super supportive of him. They are never super supportive of Hannibal at all in any of this, ever. But he does it anyway. So he marches on from Saguntum. So let's take a look at this. His dad, or his father, and him helped conquer all of this land, which is now Spain, but the Iberian Peninsula. All that blue. Now, the orange here is Rome. Hannibal is marching up the Iberian Peninsula with his army. He is on a mission. After the 8-month siege from Saguntum, he gathers even a larger army, 90,000 infantry, people marching, 12,000 cavalry, people on horses, 37 elephants. Oh, yes, I'm talking war elephants, y'all. Elephants. They're fighting with elephants. Yeah. And a huge pack train as in like donkeys who are carrying a whole bunch of stuff on their backs. And he heads north. He's heading north, and he's heading to Rome. Here we go. Now, what were his army like? Well, The Carthaginian heavy infantry used the Greek phalanx. This is what they were. This is what they were armored with. They had spears, a round shield, a helmet. That's about it. Yep. You're going into war, and you have skin showing. Arms, hands, legs, feet. Your neck is completely exposed. Oh yeah. No armor at all. Why? It was heavy. You had to carry so many other things. They didn't have time to, they didn't have the they didn't have the strength to carry all their armor as well. So this is what they had. This is what they were fighting with. It was easy to move in. They could be very light on their feet, but well, kind of dangerous. Their sarissa, or their lance, their spear that they held, was about another 13 feet taller than their heads. Oh yeah, very cool. So the Carthaginians used something called the Greek phalanx. And although this was a fantastic way to fight with a large group, and it was rather deadly, it was also rather cumbersome. So this is kind of what it looked like. You had a bunch of guys in a line and with their spears out, and then a bunch of guys behind you with your spears coming right down next to you, and guys behind them with more spears, and guys behind them with more spears. So this is sort of what it looked like. The Hellenic or Greek phalanx was used all around the Mediterranean area until the Romans invented something better. Oh yeah, we'll talk about that. The phalanx was actually composed of 256 men, so a 16 by 16. There you go, there's some area for you. 16 times 16, 256. And although it could move in any direction, it was crazy difficult. It was pretty much nearly impossible, because look at all those spears there for a moment, okay? So now you're marching in that direction, and then now you're being told to stop, and you need to turn to your right. But before you do that, everyone has to stop at the same time. Then you all have to put your spears up. Then you all have to turn. Then you all lower your spears at the same time. You know how much training and time and practice it took? Can you imagine trying to hold a giant spear 13 feet above your head, and then hoping the guy next to you doesn't hit you with his spear, or the guy way behind you, as they're trying to lower it, doesn't stab you in the back? Oh yeah, yeah. It was really difficult. And you're trying to do all this while you're battling, which makes it even more difficult to be fantastic at it and to be fast. But if you're fighting someone who's also doing the same thing, well, then I guess you don't have a problem. Later, the Romans developed a much more fantastic way to fight, and that was part of the undoing of the Carthaginians. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What the Carthage army also had was the Numidian cavalry. Now, most of their men were mercenaries from Numidia, from the Numidian tribes in northern Africa. The cavalry, they were fantastic. They would fight with spears, with swords, shields, and they rode on horseback. So while everyone's fighting, these guys are on horseback. The 12,000 of them are riding along on horses, swinging their swords and taking people down. They have a lot more they have a better ability to move around and fight at all different angles, and fight much faster than the phalanx and the infantry crew. So definitely important parts of the Carthaginian assault crew. Again, though, no armor. All right, so while Hannibal is marching through the Iberian Peninsula, the first part of Spain is actually all rolling hills, and it's happy and it's calm and it's very flat and very easy. Very lots of fields, very easy to walk through. As you go further north, you run into the beginning, the lower Alps, the beginning of the Alps, and so it's very mountainous, very rugged. great areas to be ambushed by different people, different tribes that weren't friendlies. And, well, can you imagine trying to take hundreds of thousands of people through that? That looks really difficult. So, on his way north, Hannibal's army of 90,000, he loses 22,000 men fighting its way north across the rugged Iberian countryside. So as it gets more difficult, there are other tribes of people that are not friendlies on either side, and they're attacking his men. Men are, falling off of little cliffs and whatnot and dying. 11,000 of his Iberian allies refused to even follow him into the mountains. They're like, no, man, we stop here. We don't want to go through that. Are you kidding? So he begrudgingly sends them home, hoping that, well, at least I'm sending them home. Hopefully we're on good terms and that, we're still allies and we can, work with them later at some point. Then he leaves another 20,000 infantry behind to hold the Iberian Peninsula under the command of his brother, Hasdrubal the Fair. His brother is now in charge of that crew of 20,000 infantry. He says, hey, man, anyone shows up, you fight them. Otherwise, we're going to go on to Rome. And then Hannibal replaces some of his losses with some Gaul mercenaries. So a whole crew of Gaulish tribes in the northern Iberian Peninsula. He pays them lots and lots of money. And they join him because, well, money is a good thing, money and food. And he heads on with 50,000 men into the mountainous territory. Here it comes. All right. So, quick recap. He's moving from New Carthage all the way up. He battled at Saguntum. He's marching through right around Masia is when he decides, nope, people are going to get sent home. And he's on, and that's where the Iberian people go home. He picks up the Gaul right around here, and they decide to head into Rome. The first place they need to cross is the Rhone River, not Rome River, the Rhone River. Now, there's enemy Gauls and people who are friends and allies to Rome waiting on the other side. So this is it. If he takes this opportunity to cross the river, that is it. It is as if he is declaring war on Rome itself. And he's like, why wait? Let's go. Because he's Hannibal. Yeah. So, Hannibal was a brilliant army tactician. And we're going to look at a couple different events that are a couple different battles that he was in. So you'll see a couple of these little pictures like this. I'll describe them all, but he was brilliant. These things that you might think, oh, well, duh, why don't we just do that? That makes sense. The reason these things probably make sense to you and you're like, oh, that's a really smart thing to do. Yeah, why don't people do that all the time? They do all that all the time now. This was the first time it was ever done. So these strategies are the first time these strategies came up in war, ever. So the Gauls, the Reds, are the Roman allies. And they are hanging out on the other side of this river. Hannibal says, all right, guys, we're going to set up camp here. And we see that they're camp on the other side of the river. And in the middle of the night, we're going to send our group of the horse rider. Absolutely. We're going to send the cavalry up, cross the river, and come back in on the other side behind the Gaul and Roman camp. And then in the morning, cross the river, start to attack. And when they start to attack, The the Gauls and the Numidian cavalry come in from behind, attack the camp, and they're surrounded on both sides, and they lose almost almost instantly. I mean, it wasn't super fast, but in a day, the battle is done. They came in from behind and snuck in. Now, after the battle, the war elephants are brought across the river, and well, most of you know that elephants can swim, right? Elephants know how to swim. They do. They hang out in the water and they can swim. Hannibal and his men did not know that elephants can swim. So they put the elephants on rafts and tried to get them to cross the river. The elephants did not like the rafts, and halfway across the river, most of them jumped off the rafts and swam to shore, and causing a good amount of people to end up drowning in the river because, well, the elephants can get across the river by themselves, but the handlers didn't know that. And so, although they might have survived that battle, they weren't smart enough to know elephants can swim. Which, now that the elephants have proved it, they won't make that mistake again. Hannibal is now standing at the front of the Alps. Now, he had seen mountains before. There were the Atlas Mountains in North Africa. He had just gotten his troops through the small mountains called the Pyrenees, and he knew about the Alps. He had sent spies up to find out about the Alps. The Alps are freezing cold, and it's cold, and they're tall, and they're very difficult to get through, especially, think about, they're not wearing winter coats. They're wearing sandals on their feet. Think about what you would wear in the summer: t-shirt, shorts, sandals. And now think about going through, like, if you've ever gone skiing before. Now think about going skiing or climbing up and down the ski hill in your summer gear. That's what Hannibal was basically looking at doing now. So he knew he only had a short time to get through the Alps before the winter hit and things got worse. So they didn't celebrate at all crossing the Rhone. They took right off through the Alps because it was the shortest distance to get to Rome. And this, ladies and gentlemen, besides his fantastic skill and ability and strategy in battle, this is also what Hannibal will be known for forever: taking war elephants through the Alps mountains. Yeah, it's awesome. Um, these elephants also are not fans of going through cold, snowy areas. These elephants are from Africa, where it's warm and it's hot, and it's definitely not mountainous and cold. So no one is having a good time here. The route through the Alps was very tough on the men and the animals. Snow and ice in the upper Alps made footing very slippery. Again, you're walking in sandals. Think about, you're on this journey through the Alps. This isn't a day-long journey either. They were in there for a couple months in the Alps wearing sandals. The freezing temperatures actually ended up killing much of the army, many of the troops, the animals, the people, but he made it. Hannibal's march through the Alps made him a living legend. Historians would always remember this epic advance and Hannibal's leadership and determination as as a defining legend of the Punic War. So it was crazy. It was crazy. He took elephants through the Alps, guys, and everyone was wearing shorts. It was insane. But people survived. They made it. They got through, and it's just crazy. And he did it. And he didn't stop. When people were like, "What are you doing? This is crazy." He's like, "Yep, we're going to do it. because his hatred for Rome was so big that the mountains weren't going to stop him. He was going to go. Hannibal's army is decimated, though, by the end of this trip. I mean, just. He arrives in Italy with 20,000 infantry, 4,000 cavalry, and 8 elephants. Now let's look at that. Hold on. Remember at the beginning, he had an army of 90,000. Way back here, when he got right up here, he ended up getting some Gauls. He had 50,000 when he left this area, 50,000, and now he's down to 20,000. 30,000 men were lost in the Alps, and about 20 some elephants, and numerous horses. The 12,000 cavalry is down to 4,000 cavalry. His army it's like split in half or worse. But they made it. They made it. I could hit the next button, but I think we've gone quite far enough today. Tomorrow, tune in to find out how the Punic War Part 2 gets going.